Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others count every penny and still struggle to get ahead? What if I told you that everything you think you know about managing money is backwards, and that obsessing over your daily coffee purchase is actually preventing you from becoming wealthy? My name is Nick, and I help people understand the counterintuitive principles that separate the financially successful from everyone else. If you're tired of traditional budgeting advice that tells you to track every expense down to the last cent, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if this changes how you think about money. Here's something that will completely shift your perspective on personal finance. There's an Italian economist from over a century ago who discovered a mathematical principle that explains why most people stay broke despite their best efforts. His name was Vilfredo Pareto, and in 1896, he noticed something fascinating while studying wealth distribution in Italy. 80% of the land was owned by just 20% of the population. Even more interesting, he observed the same pattern in his own garden, where 20% of his plants produced 80% of the fruit. This observation became known as the Pareto Principle, or the 80-20 rule, and it applies to virtually everything in life. But here's where it gets really interesting for your money. Most financial advisors and budgeting experts completely ignore this principle, which is why their advice keeps you spinning your wheels instead of building actual wealth. The traditional approach to money management tells you to track every single expense, categorize your spending into dozens of different buckets, and obsess over cutting costs wherever possible. They'll tell you that buying a $4 coffee every day is the reason you're not wealthy. They'll suggest you clip coupons, negotiate your phone bill, and cancel streaming services to save money. Sound familiar? But here's the problem with this approach. You're focusing your energy on the 80% of decisions that only impact 20% of your financial outcome. You're majoring in the minors while the real wealth building opportunities pass you by completely. Let me give you a real world example that illustrates this perfectly. Sarah is a marketing manager who makes $60,000 per year. She's been following traditional budgeting advice for 3 years. She tracks every expense in a spreadsheet, brings lunch to work every day, makes coffee at home, and has successfully reduced her monthly spending by about $200 through various small cuts. She's proud of her discipline and feels like she's being financially responsible. Meanwhile, her coworker James makes the same salary, but approaches money completely differently. He buys coffee out every morning, eats lunch at restaurants, and doesn't track his daily expenses. However, James focused his energy on 3 major decisions. He moved to a smaller apartment that reduced his housing costs by $600 per month. He sold his car with a $400 monthly payment and bought a reliable used vehicle with cash. And he negotiated a $10,000 raise by switching to a similar role at a different company. Who do you think is building wealth faster? James is saving over $1,000 more per month than Sarah despite spending more on coffee and lunch. The difference isn't discipline or financial knowledge. It's understanding which decisions actually matter. This is the power of the 80-20 rule applied to money. 20% of your financial decisions determine 80% of your wealth building potential. The problem is, most people spend their time and energy on the wrong 20%. So what are these high-impact financial decisions that actually matter? There are 3 main categories that determine the majority of your financial future: housing, transportation, and income. These 3 areas represent roughly 80% of most people's expenses and 100% of their wealth-building potential. Let's start with housing, which is typically your largest monthly expense. The difference between spending 30% of your income on housing versus 50% is massive over time. If you make $5,000 per month, the difference between a $500 rent payment and a $2,500 rent payment is $12,000 per year over a decade. That's $120,000, not including the investment returns you could have earned on that money. But here's where most people get it wrong. They'll stress about a $20 increase in their utility bill while completely ignoring the fact that they're paying $300 more per month than necessary for their apartment because they wanted granite countertops and a gym in the building. They're optimizing for the wrong variables. The same principle applies to transportation. The average car payment in America is now over $700 per month. Add insurance, gas, maintenance, and registration,
and you're easily looking at over $1,000 monthly for transportation. Yet, most people will spend more time researching the best gas station rewards program than they will analyzing whether they actually need a car payment at all. Here's a perspective shift that might sting a little. If you're worried about spending $5 on coffee while simultaneously making a $700 car payment for a vehicle that's worth less every month, you've completely missed the point of financial optimization. You're focusing on saving pennies while hemorrhaging dollars. The third major category is income, and this is where the 80/20 rule becomes really powerful. Most people spend zero time working on increasing their income and all their time trying to reduce expenses. But think about the mathematics here. If you make $50,000 per year, cutting expenses might save you a few thousand annually. Increasing your income by 20% adds $10,000 to your annual earnings, which is easier. Finding ways to save $10,000 through expense reduction, or finding ways to earn an additional $10,000. For most people, earning more money is actually the more straightforward path, yet it's the one they avoid. This happens because focusing on expenses feels like taking control, while increasing income feels uncertain and risky. Cutting your coffee budget gives you an immediate sense of accomplishment. Asking for a raise or looking for a better job requires you to step outside your comfort zone and face potential rejection. But here's the reality check you need to hear. The wealthy don't get wealthy by optimizing their grocery spending. They get wealthy by optimizing their major life decisions. They buy less house than they can afford. They avoid expensive car payments, and they prioritize increasing their income above all else. Warren Buffett, one of the wealthiest people in the world, famously demonstrated this principle with a $1 million bet he made in 2007. He wagered that a simple, low-cost index fund would outperform a collection of actively managed hedge funds over a 10-year period. The hedge fund managers were highly sophisticated, used complex strategies, and charged substantial fees for their expertise. Buffett chose the simplest possible approach, investing in an S&P 500 index fund with minimal fees and making no changes for the entire decade. Meanwhile, the hedge fund managers constantly bought and sold investments, trying to time the market and identify the perfect opportunities. The result, Buffett's simple approach delivered a total return of 125.8%, while the hedge funds returned between 2.8 and 87.7%. The simple strategy focused on the 20% that mattered, while the complex strategies got lost in the 80% that didn't. This same principle applies to every aspect of your financial life. 20% of your habits generate 80% of your financial results. 20% of your investment decisions create 80% of your returns. 20% of your time spent on money management produces 80% of your wealth building progress. The question is, are you focusing on the right 20%? Because if you're spending your evenings tracking whether you spent $1,800 or $20 on groceries, while ignoring the fact that your housing costs are too high and you haven't asked for a raise in 3 years, you're playing the wrong game entirely. Most people approach their finances like they're trying to solve a 1,000-piece puzzle by obsessing over each individual piece, when what they really need to do is focus on the four corner pieces that hold everything together. They'll spend 30 minutes researching which brand of pasta sauce costs 15 cents less, while completely ignoring the fact that they're throwing away thousands of dollars every month on decisions they made once and forgot about. Here's where the 80/20 rule gets really practical for your money, and why understanding this could be the difference between retiring comfortably and working until you're 75. Let's talk about the specific 20% of financial decisions that actually determine your wealth building trajectory. The first major category is what I call the housing trap, and this is where most people unknowingly sabotage their financial future before they even get started. Your housing decision isn't just about finding a place to live. It's about determining how much money you'll have available to build wealth for the rest of your life. The difference between spending 25% of your income on housing versus 40% isn't just a budget line item. It's the difference between having money to invest and being perpetually broke despite earning a decent salary. Let me put this in perspective.
with some real numbers that might shock you. If you earn $70,000 per year and spend 40% on housing, that's $28,000 annually, or about $2,300 per month. If you can find housing that costs 25% of your income, you're spending $17,500 annually, or about $1,450 per month. The difference is $10,500 every single year. Now, here's where compound interest makes this decision even more powerful. If you invest that extra $10,000 annually at an 8% return, you'll have an additional $1.22 million after 30 years. That's not a typo. One housing decision made once can literally determine whether you retire with enough money or spend your golden years eating generic cereal and hoping Social Security doesn't get cut. But most people don't think about housing this way, or they think about granite countertops, walk-in closets, and whether the apartment complex has a pool they'll use twice a year. They're optimizing for lifestyle inflation instead of wealth accumulation, and then they wonder why they can't seem to get ahead financially despite following all the traditional budgeting advice. The second category is transportation, and this is where Americans have collectively lost their minds when it comes to financial decision making. The average new car payment is now over $700 per month, and people are financing vehicles for 7 or 8 years. Think about that for a moment. You're making payments on a depreciating asset for almost a decade. It's like paying rent on something that becomes worthless while you're paying for it. Here's the math that car dealerships don't want you to understand. If you buy a reliable used car for $15,000 with cash instead of financing a new car for $40,000, you're not just saving $25,000 up front. You're avoiding $700 in monthly payments for the next 6 years. That's $50,000 in total payments for something that will be worth maybe $15,000 when you're done paying for it. But let's say you take that $700 monthly payment and invest it instead of sending it to a car company. Over 20 years, that $700 per month invested at 8% annually becomes over $400,000. Suddenly, the decision to buy a sensible used car instead of a shiny new one becomes a $400,000 decision, not a $25,000 decision. Yet, people will spend hours researching the best gas rewards credit card to save $20 per month, while simultaneously signing up for a car payment that will cost them hundreds of thousands in opportunity cost over their lifetime. It's like being worried about a leaky faucet while your basement floods. The third major category is income optimization, and this is where the 80-20 rule becomes almost absurd in its implications. Most people spend zero time actively working to increase their income and all their time trying to shave expenses. They'll clip coupons for 2 hours to save 15, but won't spend 2 hours updating their resume or researching higher paying opportunities. Here's a reality check that might be uncomfortable. If you make $50,000 per year and you spend your evenings tracking every expense in a budgeting app, you're essentially working a part-time job that pays you maybe a few hundred annually in savings. Meanwhile, if you spent those same evenings developing skills that could increase your income by 20%, you'd earn an additional $10,000 per year, which sounds like a better use of your time, optimizing your grocery spending to save $50 monthly or learning new skills that could lead to a $10,000 raise. The math isn't even close. Yet most people choose the low-impact activity because it feels more controllable and provides immediate gratification. The wealthy understand something that most people miss entirely. Your income has unlimited upside potential, but your expenses have a natural floor. You can only cut costs so much before you're living in a van and eating beans every meal, but there's theoretically no limit to how much money you can earn. So why would you focus your energy on the activity with limited potential instead of the one with unlimited potential? This brings us to what I call the budgeting paradox. The more time you spend tracking small expenses, the less time you have available to work on increasing your income. It's like being so focused on organizing your sock drawer that you forget to go to work. You're being productive, but you're being productive on the wrong things. I'm not suggesting you become completely reckless with money or ignore your spending entirely. What I'm suggesting is that you apply the 80-20 rule to determine where your financial energy should be focused. Spend 20% of your financial planning time optimizing the big three categories: housing, transportation, and income. Spend the remaining 80% of your time actually living your life instead of obsessing over every financial transaction.
Here's another way to think about this principle. Your time and mental energy are finite resources. Every minute you spend analyzing whether to buy name brand or generic peanut butter is a minute you're not spending on activities that could dramatically improve your financial situation. It's opportunity cost in action, and most people are making terrible opportunity cost decisions without even realizing it. The successful application of the 80/20 rule to money requires you to be ruthless about identifying which financial activities actually move the needle. Does negotiating your cable bill from $80 to $70 per month move the needle? Barely. Does moving to a cheaper apartment that saves you $400 monthly move the needle? Absolutely. Does using a coupon app to save $3 on your grocery bill move the needle? Not really. Um, does developing a skill that makes you eligible for a promotion with a $15,000 salary increase move the needle? You bet it does. This is why wealthy people often seem financially careless to outside observers. They'll spend $12 on airport coffee without thinking twice, but they'll spend weeks researching real estate markets before making a property investment. They understand that the $12 coffee is in the 80% of decisions that don't matter, while the real estate investment is in the 20% that determines their financial future. The 80/20 rule also explains why most financial advice is completely backwards for wealth building. Traditional advice focuses on what I call financial busy work. Track every expense, create detailed budgets with 20 different categories, negotiate every bill, use cashback apps, clip coupons, and obsess over minor purchases. This advice keeps you feeling productive while ensuring you never actually build wealth. It's designed to make you feel like you're taking control of your finances while keeping you focused on activities that don't significantly impact your financial outcome. It's brilliant from a business perspective because it keeps you engaged with financial products and services, but it's terrible from a wealth building perspective. Meanwhile, the actual wealth building activities are simple but require courage and long term thinking. Buy less house than you can afford, avoid car payments, increase your income aggressively, and invest the difference consistently. These four activities represent maybe 20% of financial decision making, but they determine 100% of your wealth building success. The uncomfortable truth is that most people have been conditioned to believe that financial responsibility means obsessing over the smallest details. They've been taught that wealthy people got rich by being extremely frugal, never spending money on anything fun, and tracking every penny religiously. This narrative is not only wrong, it's actively harmful to your wealth building potential. The real wealthy people I know are surprisingly relaxed about small purchases. They'll order the expensive wine at dinner without checking the price, buy organic groceries without comparing costs per ounce, and tip generously at restaurants. But ask them about their housing situation, and they'll tell you they bought a modest home in a good neighborhood rather than stretching for the McMansion they could technically afford. Ask them about transportation, and they'll explain why they drive a reliable Honda instead of leasing a luxury SUV. This seems contradictory until you understand the 80/20 principle. They're loose with money on decisions that don't impact their wealth and extremely disciplined on decisions that do. They've identified the vital few financial choices that determine their net worth, and they optimize ruthlessly for those while ignoring the trivial many. Here's where this gets really interesting from a psychological perspective. Most people do exactly the opposite. They'll stress about spending $8 on lunch while simultaneously ignoring the fact that they're overpaying for their apartment by $300 every month. They'll spend 20 minutes researching the cheapest gas station while making zero effort to negotiate their salary or look for better job opportunities. This backwards approach to money management is like being worried about a mosquito bite while ignoring the fact that you're bleeding from a major wound. The mosquito bite is annoying and gets your attention because it's right in front of you, but it's the wound that's actually threatening your health. So, there you have it. The 8/20 rule of money isn't just some academic theory. It's the difference between building real wealth and staying busy with financial theater. Stop optimizing your coffee budget and start optimizing the decisions that actually matter. Your future millionaire self will thank you for focusing on the 20% that counts.